Welcome to Conversation Kitchen. My name is Mariah Kessler with Hungry for Truth and the South Dakota Soybean Checkoff. We're teaming up with local food makers to learn how to make delicious recipes using soy and South Dakota ingredients. Today we're here with Riccardo at Maribella Restaurant. How are you doing today?
Great, thank you.
Good.
How about you?
I'm doing well.
Are you hungry?
I'm extremely hungry, yeah. What do we have here today?
Today we made our arancini. So arancini are basically breaded risotto balls. So you're familiar with risotto, kind of sticky rice, cheesy rice. And we bread it with gluten-free breadcrumbs and then fry it up in some oil, little condiments, and then a little aioli, and then we're good to go.
Oh, wonderful. That looks great. So where do you go? You mentioned some of the ingredients that you use. Where do you source these ingredients?
Because we're trying to be as authentic as possible as an Italian restaurant, we do a lot of importing, so importing cheeses and even our Parmesan tomatoes. But we do partner with Dakota Mushroom here in Sioux Falls, and he grows all of our mushrooms and microgreens locally.
So this is a fried dish. What kind of oil do you use to fry it?
We use vegetable oil, which is 100% soybean.
Okay. Is there a reason that you use soybean oil?
It's a little more cost effective. Plus, we do have extra virgin olive oil from Italy in-house, but that's more for kind of finishing off a dish.
So your menu is beautiful, and it's in a lot of Italian too, which is awesome, very authentic. So how did you go about building that menu, and tell me a little bit more about this dish as well?
Sure, so with our executive chef, Adam Schumacher, and my wife, Mary Beth, and I, we kind of sat down and just developed. We knew we wanted the layout to be as authentic to Italy as possible, and so there's different courses, if you will. So there's antipasti, which literally means before the pasta, because pasta is always a course, which is called the primi, first course, and then secondi is second course, which is all your proteins. We have contorni as sides. We even offer a tasting menu if you look at all our pastas and you just can't decide.
So we keep talking about Italian and Italy and, great pasta dishes. What brought you, what's your background? What brought you to Sioux Falls? What inspired you to start an Italian restaurant?
Sure, well, I was born in Florence, Italy. We moved to the United States when I was 5 years old, and we immigrated to Boston. Went to high school there, stayed in Boston for college. I went to Tufts University, and while in college, I met this girl. And she was unlike any other girl I had met, and it turns out she was from Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we're glad to have you here. And I know that you do a lot of work with the community and, have different business ventures and whatnot. Tell us a little bit more about how you're involved in Sioux Falls and how you bring people to your restaurants.
Sure, yeah. So we moved to Sioux Falls about 24 years ago. And throughout those years, I've been in restaurants, and I've managed other restaurants in town. I'm sure people recognize me from Spezia or Westford Hill Country Club. I was a wine rep for a couple of years as well. And it just kind of came time to start our own. I had been part of other businesses, especially restaurants, part of startups, and just asked myself the question, why shouldn't we do this for our own family? And so an opportunity came up on 8th Street across from 8th and Railroad. And thankfully we had created a really loyal following in the first 18 months of our business. They supported us through COVID, and then they supported us in an even bigger way once we were able to reopen. And thankfully we have a large patio at our wine bar, and people, at that time felt safer to be outside. And so we filled that patio every night. We had live music out there 3 or 4 nights a week. So yeah, we're grateful to Sioux Falls as a community that supported us. In fact, they supported us enough to start thinking about, could we do another original concept?
With South Dakota Soybean, we're working with farmers all the time, and a common conversation that we talk about all the time is how to grow crops and how soil affects crops in South Dakota. And soil and agriculture and farming is obviously how wine is produced. And you are a bit of a wine expert. So tell us a little bit about, how soil and wine and production all works together and how you bring that into your restaurant.
Sure. It is a absolute parallel between the agriculture that we come to know and love here in South Dakota, whether it's soybeans or corn or what have you. Soil composition, the age of the vine, the amount of sunshine you get, the amount of rainfall you get, those are all huge factors.
So there's all sorts of different types of wine, and they pair differently with different types of food. So how would you go about basic pairings within your restaurant?
Absolutely. You know, the golden rule is pair like flavors with like flavors. So something is spicy, you want to pair something that has maybe peppery or spiciness to it in the wine. If something is very acidic, you know, tomatoes are acidic, you pair an acidic white wine, for example, with it. But acidity is a big thing. And one of the things that I don't think we've mentioned yet is that our wine list at Maribella is 100% Italian. We don't have wines from California, Oregon, South America, Australia. We don't have any of those wines here. It's all intentional. We want the wines that pair the best with our menu. Because our menu is 100% Italian, we want our wines to be 100% from Italy as well.
Wonderful, yeah. So tell me a little bit more about how this pairing works.
Sure. Should we?
I think we should crack it.
We should. Yeah, so Chianti Classico. Are you familiar with geography in Tuscany?
Tell me more.
Sure. You know, the analogy I use is if you think of South Dakota as Italy, and you think of Minnehaha County as Tuscany,
okay,
then Sioux Falls would be comparable to Chianti, and then downtown Sioux Falls is Chianti Classico. So when we talk about Chianti and Tuscany, those are all regions and subregions. And the reason why that's important is because the less out you source, so meaning that the more concentrated you're sourcing grapes from, the higher the quality the wine is going to be.
All right, we can
Okay, so there's two reasons why we swirl wine.
Okay.
One is to aerate the wine, because if you think of wine as this, you know, living, breathing, organic thing, that's literally been corked up in the bottle. And the reason why we cork wine bottles is to keep air out. We want oxygen to stay out, because if oxygen leaks in, it's going to oxidize the wine, it's going to go bad, turns to vinegar. But now that we've opened it, now we want it to come back to life. And so we want to reinvigorate the wine, so mix it with air. And then the second reason, really important reason, is we want to evaluate the legs. So if you look through the glass, see the legs that are streaming?
I do, yeah.
Inside the bowl of the glass, and it's rolling back down. Those are called legs. Sometimes they're called tears or fingers. But legs will give you an indication of the amount of alcohol in the wine. So the slower and thicker the legs are, the higher the alcohol.
Okay.
If they're kind of runny and watery, that means lower alcohol. And you want to look for fruit
It smells really
characteristics. You want to look for earth tones, oak flavors, floral. There's lots and lots of, you know, hundreds of different aromas you can smell. And then once you pick out kind of that dry cherry, a little bit of that tobacco from the oak aging, now we want to taste it and see if the palate matches what we smelled. So, cheers.
Cheers.
Or in Italian, salute.
Salute. Thank you so much for having us today. So if people want to come down and try your food, where can they find you?
Well, we are located in downtown Sioux Falls at 360 South Main Avenue, in the Washington Square building, across from the Washington Pavilion. We're also on the internet, www.ciaomaribella.com, spelled C-I-A-O, maribella.com. And we are also on Facebook and Instagram.
Well, thanks again for joining us, Riccardo.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time on Conversation Kitchen.